Hello everyone. Let's start with India and the global south, India-Latin America relations. So Latin America is a geopolitical and cultural reason, not a geographical reason in strict sense. And the Latin American countries are those that speak Romance language, chiefly Spanish, Portuguese, and French. And these include South American countries such as Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, Colombia, Central American countries Guatemala, Panama, Costa Rica, Caribbean nations such as Cuba, Dominican Republic, Trinidad, Tobago, and Mexico from North America, and this also include Puerto Rico. So even though these nations they are diverse in ethnicity, economic, and political system, they share some element which these uh, these nations also share with India's rise. So elements such as shared colonial history, primarily under Spain and Portugal, whereas India was under British rule, a legacy of anti-imperial struggle, जो इंडिया में भी है, post-colonial development trajectories, same Indian countries, and then both India and Latin American countries they aspire for global South solidarity. Now, India Latin America trajectory. So both these nations they follow what scholars term parallel trajectory of post-coloniality. इसका मतलब है कि for a long time when both these nations they were busy in building their own countries, they did not cross paths with each other. So both emerged from colonial dominance into independent nation state, yet they seldom engaged with each other. So during the early years from 1947 to 1991, Jawaharlal Nehru's policy was deeply committed to anti-colonialism, non-alignment, and third world solidarity, and which these values were also shared and echoed by Latin American leaders like Perón, Vargas, and Castro. And formal diplomatic ties they started when India opened its first mission in Argentina. And some Latin American countries they gradually reciprocated, but with limited intensity. The reasons were many: a vast ocean between them. Then most of these nations they were suffering from the same problem, uh, a long history of colonial exploitation, which left respective countries in near poverty situation. So most of these countries they were building their own nations. Then, despite sheer ideological orientation, actual engagement was low. First, the first reason for that geographical remoteness and lack of transport infrastructure. कि अगर आप वर्ल्ड मैप में देखें तो इंडिया और लैटिन अमेरिकन कंट्रीज इनके बीच में एक सिर्फ ओशियानिक रूट्स हैं और उसके अलावा जो लैंड रूट है वो काफ़ी लंबा है. यहाँ से वेस्ट एशिया या फिर सेंट्रल एशिया वहाँ से होके फिर अफ्रीकन नेशन के थ्रू या फिर यूरोपियन नेशन के थ्रू फिर अगेन वाटर बॉडी क्रॉस करके लैटिन अमेरिका में. सो उस वक्त में इतना ट्रांसपोर्ट अवेलेबल नहीं था. देन इंडियाज फोकस वाज ऑन साउथ एशिया, ऑन कोल्ड वॉर न्यूट्रलिटी एंड इनवर्ड लुकिंग इकॉनमी. क्योंकि शुरू में जो इंडिया बिफोर एलपीजी रिफॉर्म्स जो इंडिया है इट फॉलोड प्रोटेक्शनिस्ट इकोनॉमी. सो हमारा सारा फोकस जो है वो अपनी इकोनॉमी भी था. And then Latin America's preoccupation with the US relation and Cold War alignment. So इन reasons की वजह से जो engagement था वो बहुत कम था. So as a result, Indo-Latin American leadership in this era, relationship in this era was shaped more by rhetorical solidarity in forums like non-aligned movement or G77, but tangible or strategic cooperation was low. Then post 1991 phase. So when India started on the trajectory of economic reforms, LPG reforms of 1991, balance of payment crisis, this turned out to be a turning point in its foreign policy outlook. So India, to increase its footprint everywhere, it started various policies such as Look West, Look East, Look Latin America. These strategies emerged in response to globalization and compelling India to diversify partnership beyond traditional regimes. Then Latin America's economic reforms. Here, the same process, privatization, liberalization, democratic transitions in 1990s They created complementary opportunities for engagement, for reciprocal engagement. Then trade began to grow steadily. First, India's rising need for natural resources such as copper, oil, uh, lithium, and Latin America's market for generic medicine, automobiles, IT services. They also look for places where they can diversify their own portfolio. फिर उसके बाद diplomatic engagement expanded when India opened embassies in Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Peru, and bilateral agreement on culture, science, technology they began to emerge. Then the contemporary phase, post 2000. So the 21st century had witnessed a strategic awakening kind of situation in India-Latin America relations. And the factors are various geopolitical and economic. First one is the rise of BRICS and IPSA. BRICS, which is platform for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and IPSA is India, Brazil, and South Africa. So Brazil's presence in both this grouping brought together India to Latin America in various issues such as UNSC reforms, WTO negotiation, climate justice, fair energy and mineral security. That Latin America is abundant in oil, critical minerals such as lithium, copper, and food products because Argentina, आप लोगों ने geography में देखा होगा, it has vast grasslands which are suitable for cultivating food grains. So उसके लिए भी these nations they became vital for India's strategic needs. Then, as of political will, the high-level visits like President Bolsonaro's chief guest invitation to India in 2020 on Republic Day and Jaishankar's multilateral tour to Latin America, it intends underscores a good political intention to deepen ties with Latin American countries. For India's participation in India CELAC Forum, India Mercosur Trade Dialogue, and India Pacific Alliance discussion, they further institutionalize multilateral relations between Indo-Latin America. Now let's have a brief look at political and diplomatic engagement. So the basic podium for this relation, they are cross-continental collaboration, diversification of trade portfolio, and the belief is also rooted in South-South solidarity, multipolarity, and mutual development aspirations. So as of bilateral ties, so today India maintains diplomatic relations with all 33 Latin American and Caribbean countries, LAC countries, and has over 14 resident mission in this region. So this evolution of this reflects a deliberate strategic shift to India's foreign policy. जैसे देखा था कि from 1947 to 1991, diplomatic missions were concentrated only a few countries, a few Latin American countries. This foreign engagement, especially with Latin American countries, has become more visible under present government's ACT global foreign policy approach. Now, as of high-level visits, so Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Brazil for BRICS Summit in 2014-2019, and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, his visit to Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay, it reflected India's renewed intent to cultivate durable diplomatic relations. And in 2022, Jaishankar inaugurated India's first embassy in Paraguay. Now, this diplomatic signal when Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro was invited on Republic Day parade in 2020, it symbolized India's intent to raise the profile of LSE relations. Now, as of bilateral cooperation framework, so India has signed over 100 bilateral agreements with LSE countries in areas such as agriculture, where it has signed MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico. Space cooperation framework, where ISRO and AEB, the space agency of Brazil, they started collaboration for Amazonia 1 satellite launch. Then pharmaceutical and health. So during COVID-19 pandemic, India sent vaccines to Brazil, Guyana, and other nations under Vaccine Maitri campaign. And as of renewable energy and climate change, especially through International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Now, next, Foreign Office Consultation and Joint Commission. So, regional FOCs, they have been institutionalized with countries such as Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Colombia, which enhances diplomatic predictability. And India has also joined commissions with Brazil and Mexico that provide platform for continued dialogue on political and economic things. And let's talk about multilateral engagement. So Latin America and India, they find common cause in reforming the global order. First ones are BRICS, IPSA, and G20. So Brazil and India both are members of BRICS and IPSA, and they have jointly pushed for UNSC reform via G4. G4 is a group that includes India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan that want reforms in the structure, the organization of United Nations Security Council. Then they also seek reforms of International Monetary Fund and World Bank to reflect current economic realities. And these countries also push for de-dollarization and alternative financial mechanism such as BRICS Bank, also known as New Development Bank. And finally, in IPSA, uh, the emphasis on tri-continental democratic solidarity. So IPSA fund, it has co-financed developmental initiatives in health, education, and gender equality across global south, including Haiti and Nicaragua. So all in all, in short, the multilateral cooperation, it is more about solidarity and reforming the existing institution so that the emerging reality, क्योंकि जो geopolitical realities हैं, they are changing, और उसके साथ जो many countries, especially अगर G4 nations की बात करें तो India, Brazil, Germany and Japan, all these countries, they are emerging in middle power and they are seeking their place. And जब इन ये countries हैं that are starting to mobilize themselves, ऐसे में to make the upward journey, जो global institutions हैं, especially those institutions that hold the world by neck, वो उन institution में restructure या reorganization ज़रूरी, such as UNSC हो गया, जो ब्रेटन वुड्स इंस्टीट्यूशन है, IMF and World Bank है, and finally the de-dollarization thing, क्योंकि डॉलर जो है it is a prominent currency, a hedge currency in the modern world. ग्लोबल करेंसी नहीं कह सकते, बट स्टिल इट एक्ट्स एज ए हीगेमॉन. और डॉलर की वजह से, जैसे अभी स्टॉक मार्केट में आपने देखा होगा, ट्रम्प की पॉलिसीज जो हैं, तो ट्रम्प्स अनप्रिडिक्टेबल पॉलिसीज, फिर उसके बाद फेड रेट, और इन दोनों की वजह से जो एमर्जिंग इकोनॉमीज हैं, इकोनॉमीज ऑफ एशिया, लैटिन अमेरिका, अफ्रीका, इन इकोनॉमीज को बहुत सफ़र करना पड़ता है. जब भी ट्रम्प की कोई पॉलिसी आती है या फेड रेट, जो यूएस फेड है, इट लोअर्स इट्स रेट, इट्स इंटरेस्ट रेट, उसकी वजह से जो सारा पैसा जो है इन एमर्जिंग इकोनॉमी से जो वापस यूरोपियन कंट्रीज़ में या फिर अमेरिका के अंदर ये पार्क होता है. सो दीज कंट्री दे फेस सिग्निफिकेंट लॉसेस. और साथ में ही ये जो फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट है, अगर इफ इट इंगेजेस इन सच अनप्रिडिक्टेबल फ्लाइट, तो उनकी जो डेवलपमेंट ट्रेजेक्ट्री है, इट इज़ ऑल्सो अफेक्टेड. सो उसके लिए ये दो चीज़ें ज़रूरी है. डी डॉलराइजेशन की ऑल्टरनेट करेंसीज जो हैं, उनको भी जो ग्लोबल करेंसी का जो बास्केट है उसके अंदर ऑल्टरनेट करेंसी को भी अच्छा लेवरेज दिया जाए. एंड देन ऑल्टरनेट फाइनेंशियल मैकेनिज्म इन IMF और वर्ल्ड बैंक के अलावा कुछ और भी फाइनेंशियल मैकेनिज्म होने चाहिए, लाइक न्यू डेवलपमेंट बैंक हो गया, एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक हो गया. तो ये जो ऑल्टरनेट मैकेनिज्म है, इनसे जो मच नीडेड फंड फॉर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है वो मिल सकता है. वरना IMF और जो वर्ल्ड बैंक है, दे कम अप विद देयर ओन कंडीशन नोन बाय द नेम स्ट्रक्चरल एडजस्टमेंट प्रोग्राम. और फिर ये कंडीशन जो है, ये कुछ नहीं, बस जो ऑलरेडी रिच कंट्रीज़ हैं, जो द कंट्रीज फ्रॉम ग्लोबल नॉर्थ, उनको सेटिस्फाई करने के लिए या उनके बेनिफिट के लिए Now the engagements with regional grouping. So India CLAC Forum, which was initiated in 2012 and the recent was held in 2023, that this forum, India CLAC Forum, Community of Latin American and Caribbean countries, they work toward cooperation in food security, health and pandemic response, and digital transformation. फिर जो second trade agreement है India Mercosur PTA Preferential Trade Agreement. So this PTA is operational since 2009 with Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, and finally India and Pacific Alliance with Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile. So even though India is an observer, yet they there are chances that this relationship it will have a positive trajectory. Now, as of UN and climate diplomacy, so India and LAC countries they have frequently aligned positions on common but differentiated responsibility in climate negotiations, especially in UNFCCC, and both these regions they seek necessity for a multipolar world where non-Western powers are more than just rule takers. So जो CBDR प्रिंसिपल हैं, जो UNF ट्रिपल सी जो क्लाइमेट टॉक्स हैं, उसमें ये जो प्रिंसिपल सामने आया, जिसमें इट सीक्स अ फेयर प्ले दैट जिस कंट्री ने जितना एमिशंस किया है, that country would be responsible for that much reparations. In other words, common here is that climate change is a common responsibility, common to everyone. But what about those countries that have not emitted as much carbon as global north countries have? So in that sense, if these rich countries if they have emitted more, then they should be responsible for more emission reductions. Why should the countries from global south bear the responsibility for the emitters from global north? That is the gist of CBDR principle. Even though climate change is a common responsibility, there should be a fair play in emission reductions. Those who are responsible for more emissions, they should engage in more reductions. फिर multipolarity, ये तो आप जान ही रहे हैं कि जितने भी countries है from global south, they seek that the power from global north it should be distributed to multiple poles of power throughout the world. And finally, an example. For instance, at COP26 in Glasgow and COP28 in Dubai, India and Brazil, both of them called for equity-based climate finance and technology transfer mechanism. Now, as of political convergence, both India and Latin American countries they emerged from colonial rules, and they have historically emphasized democratic governance, development with the equity, and decolonial epistemology, which advocate that indigenous knowledge system, pluriversal international relations, and inclusive global institutions. So here, this particular thing, decolonial epistemology, it means that whatever thing that any nation, any post-colonial nation engage itself into for its development, the earlier roots, the pre-independence exploitative system, they should be abolished. And वो तभी होगा जब जो indigenous knowledge है, जो local knowledge है, it is advocated and it is used. Then universal international relations means it is synonymous with multipolarity, but here it is considered that universe, the diplomatic relations or the international relations, both are like the existence of multiple universe. यहाँ पे बहुत सारे अलग अलग systems हैं, बहुत सारे अलग अलग lives हैं, indigenous people हैं, वो अलग तरीके से जीते हैं, different geographies हैं, different cultural systems हैं, वो भी हैं, and they should be respected for that. यहाँ पे the homogeneity, that is the rule of global north, it should be dismantled. And herein, the dismantling of the hegemony of global north, therein lies the answer in inclusive global institutions. कि जितने भी global institutions हैं, especially those that are made or controlled by the global north countries, they should include various voices from this pluriverse. And finally, their engagement, their increasing vote alignment in UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, UNESCO, Human Rights Council, or in various global institutions, it reflects a shared normative worldview on sovereignty, multipolarity, and global South agency. Now let's talk about economic engagement. So India and Latin America may be oceans apart, but their economic relationship, it tells a story of strategic convergence, not competition. One is a rising consumer and innovation hub, and the other is a resource-rich and export-driven, which is seeking affordable technology and dependable markets. So therein lies natural complementarity, which has been long underutilized. India is a rising consumer and innovation hub, and we seek many resources. We seek energy diversity. We need energy security with diversification, and that is especially true in present geopolitical circumstances. क्योंकि आज के टाइम में जैसे there is a war going on between Russia and Ukraine. Where yes, Russia here पहले ये एक जो डाइवर्सिफाइड पोर्टफोलियो था एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के लिए, उसमें रशिया एक ऑल्टरनेटिव था. बट राइट नाउ एक तो ये alternative is already embroiled in its own mud, where जो वेस्ट एशियन कंट्रीज हैं, अब वहाँ पे अल्टीमेटली कंट्रोल जो है वो ग्लोबल नॉर्थ कंट्रीज का है. सो एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के लिए डाइवर्सिफिकेशन बहुत ज़रूरी है. एंड हियर कम्स द रोल ऑफ द नेसेसिटी ऑफ द LAC कंट्रीज. Now, as of trade relations, so India Latin America trade volume, it has reached 53 billion US dollar from barely $2 billion 2 decades ago. So वैसे ये काफ़ी कम है with China's trade within the region, which exceeded 450 billion US dollar. But the trade trajectory between India and Latin America is robust and steady. And there is insight that India now trades more with Latin America than with traditional European partners like UK, France, or Germany. And the trade portfolio, it reflects strong complementarity, because complementarity, it should be a strong basis. It should feature in, because reciprocation, जब reciprocation होता है, complementarity होती है. Complementarity मतलब ये हमें भी चाहिए, आपको भी चाहिए. So जैसे इस तरह का जो relationship हो, a mutual one या a complementary one, तो ट्रेड रिलेशंस जो है वो स्ट्रांग होते हैं. और कोई एक जो है किसी एक कंट्री के पास ज़्यादा कार्ड्स नहीं होते, ज़्यादा पावर लेवरेज नहीं होता. लेकिन अगर जैसे आज के टाइम में व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द रिलेशंस ऑफ चाइना विद दैट ऑफ अदर कंट्रीज, तो हियर इन दिस जियोपॉलिटिकल स्ट्रेन ट्रेड रिलेशंस, चाइना होल्ड्स मोर कार्ड. सो ये सिचुएशन है, इसमें फिर आगे जाके प्रॉब्लम होती है. जैसे आपने जो बेल्ट एंड रोड इनिशिएटिव है उसमें आप देखा होगा, फिर धीरे धीरे बहुत सारी कंट्रीज में ये चीज़ सामने आएगी कि कैसे चाइना इज लेवरेजिंग द ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन. एंड हमें वो चीज़ अवॉइड करने के लिए वी शुड सीक फॉर दोज नेशंस दैट हैव स्ट्रॉन्ग कॉम्प्लीमेंटैरिटी, स्ट्रॉन्ग रेसिप्रोकेशन. उसकी वजह से ये लेवरेज जो है ये नहीं होगा. नाउ imports from Latin America that include crude oil from Venezuela, Brazil, and Mexico, copper and lithium from Chile, Peru, and Argentina, soybean oil and sugar from Argentina and Brazil, and gold and silver. And export to Latin America, it includes pharmaceuticals, automobiles, IT and fintech services, and engineering and electrical goods. Now, India's push for EV and solar expansion, it underlies the importance of Latin America's mineral wealth, because Latin America is rich in critical minerals. The lithium triangle, which is the trio of Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, It holds over 60% of global reserves of critical minerals, which are crucial for India's mineral diplomacy. In 2023, India signed a lithium exploration agreement with Argentina and began negotiation for joint ventures in Bolivia and Chile. Now, let's look at country-focused partnership. So first, Mexico is top trading partner in the region, and many Indian IT companies, TCS, Infosys, they employ thousands of local. And Mexico is also part of USMCA, which makes a strategic location for supply chain that target North America. Then, as of Brazil, it is second largest trading partner in this region, and bilateral cooperation that spans satellite that includes Amazonia Force launched by ISRO, and further it includes ethanol tech, defense production, and climate collaboration under ISA. Then the third partner, Argentina, a key partner in lithium, agriculture, and education. And India-Argentina bilateral trade, they crossed 6 billion US dollar in 2023. And as of Chile and Peru, these mineral-rich economy, they have free trade agreements under negotiation. Then as of Colombia, here energy and pharmaceutical cooperation dominates, and ONGC Videsh, it operates in Colombian oil fields where Indian pharma, such as Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy, they have hold significant market share. Now, Latin America's strategic importance also lies in its position with global trade bloc like Mercosur, Pacific Alliance, and CELAC. So here India is engaging with these multilateral trading platform via dialogue mechanism and preferential trade talks. So इसकी वजह से again Latin America's strategic importance is leverage. Now, as of investment landscape, so India's cumulative FDI in Latin America exceeded 20 billion US dollar with sectors ranging from energy to IT, automobiles, and pharma. वैसे मोस्ट ऑफ दीज थिंग्स आर फैक्ट, बट यूपीएससी के लिए ये भी बहुत ज़रूरी है. सारे तो आप याद रख नहीं सकते, बट विद रिवीजन इनमें से कुछ चीज़ें भी याद हो तो मेंस के दौरान ये बहुत काम आती है. So, as of energy and natural resources, ONGC Videsh, it holds stakes in oil blocks in Brazil and Colombia, and India is collaborating with Chile and Brazil on green hydrogen and biofuel technology aligning with green hydrogen mission. And in 2024, IOCL, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, and Argentina's YPF, they signed a memorandum of understanding on oil field services and technology transfer. As of tech and digital expansion, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, India की software industry, they have become employers of choice in Latin American countries. In 2023, India's Streak, which is Aadhaar plus UPI model, it was showcased to the Latin American regulators. And Mexico and Colombia, they are exploring pilot projects on digital ID and payment interoperability. Now, as of India's tech diplomacy, so India's soft power is increasingly rests on digital public infrastructure (DPI), and India is seeking to export this model to Latin America. Now, as of auto and manufacturing, Hero Motocorp, it launched e-scooters in Brazil, and Tata Motors and Bajaj Auto, they operate assembly plants in Mexico and Colombia. And recently, India's ACME Group and China's Coleman SA, they signed an agreement in early 2025 to co-develop a large green hydrogen plant. Now, let's look at the opportunity ahead from mineral diplomacy to climate tech. So वैसे ये जितने भी फैक्ट्स हैं ये सब फास्ट फास्ट बता रहा हूँ, क्योंकि यूपीएससी का सिलेबस इतना वास्ट है कि आप इनमें से ये सारी इंफॉर्मेशन, सारे फैक्ट्स यू कैन नॉट रिमेंबर. बट ऑल इन ऑल यूपीएससी मेंस के पर्सपेक्टिव से, बिकॉज क्वेश्चंस आर नॉट दैट सिंपल. कोई आपसे ये नहीं पूछेगा कि है ना ट्रेड रिलेशन में ट्रेड वॉल्यूम क्या है या किस कमोडिटीज़ का ट्रेड हो रहा है. Most of the question they would be interdisciplinary, analytical, and all is subjective. So ऐसे में इसमें से जो कुछ फैक्ट्स एंड इन्फो है जो आपके आंसर्स के साथ अलाइन कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि जब आप मेंस देंगे आपको पता चल जाएगा कि इट्स काइंड ऑफ वेरी फास्ट पेस गेम। ये इन्फॉर्मेशन छोड़िए, जो बेसिक इन्फॉर्मेशन है वो भी अगर आपको याद आ जाए उसमें उस टाइम पे, वो भी बहुत बड़ी बात है। ये सब जो है कोई प्रैक्टिस से आएगा। तो दैट्स व्हाई आई एम स्किपिंग इट। ये इन्फॉर्मेशन ये सब जो है ये आप रिवाइज कीजिए बार बार, है ना। आप चाहे तो फोर्टनाइटली या मंथली रिवीजन प्लान में इनको डाल सकते हैं, क्योंकि अगर यही इन्फॉर्मेशन जो है जो आपको 6 7 बार 8 बार 10 बार रिवाइज करने से इन इन डिफरेंट सेटिंग्स, इन मल्टीपल सेटिंग्स एंड विद यू कैन से डिस्टेंस फ्रीक्वेंसीज, उनके साथ ही ये चीज़ याद हो पाएगी। नाउ बैक टू द टॉपिक, अपॉर्चुनिटीज अहेड फ्रॉम मिनरल डिप्लोमेसी टू climate tech. So the untapped potential here is first is in agri-tech collaboration. So Indian innovations in solar irrigation, low-cost tractor, and dairy tech. It has a huge potential in Latin America's rural area. So pilot project in Paraguay and Nicaragua, they are showing promising results. As of climate cooperation, so let LAC country, they are vulnerable to climate change. So collaboration in climate finance, renewable energy grids, and disaster management system, they are gaining traction. And as of logistics and connectivity, so we do not have direct shipping lines, and there is also limited एयर कार्गो ऑप्शंस, क्योंकि डिस्टेंस बहुत ज़्यादा है। और उसमें हियर जो इनपुट कॉस्ट है या ओवरऑल कॉस्ट है, इट शुड सफिस with the market we are in other words, अगर कार्गो जा रहा है तो उस वो कार्गो भी उतना होना चाहिए, उसका वॉल्यूम एंड उसका वैल्यूएशन दोनों उतने होने चाहिए कि इस कार्गो या जो फ्लीट है उसकी कॉस्ट प्लस थोड़ा नॉमिनल प्रॉफिट जनरेट हो जाए, तो ही जो एयर सर्विसेज है या एयर कार्गो जो हैं वो रूट में आ सकते हैं। बट ये अभी पॉसिबल नहीं है, क्योंकि वॉल्यूम और वैल्यूएशन दोनों ही अभी फ़िलहाल लैटिन अमेरिकन कंट्रीज़ में कम है। और ऊपर से जो हमारा ट्रेड पोर्टफोलियो है इट इज़ डाइवर्सिफाइड, किसी एक पर्टिकुलर लोकेशन पे ही कमोडिटीज़ नहीं जा रही या ट्रेड वॉल्यूम नहीं जा रहा है, अलग अलग कंट्रीज़ में है। तो ऐसे में डायरेक्ट एयर फ्लीट भी इट इज़ कॉस्टिंग अस। And India's Exim Bank, Export Import Bank, it is exploring support for India Latin America shipping consortia that may receive a push under India IPSA Maritime Connectivity Plan. So this shipping consortia, it can yes readily help in reducing the fleet cost. Now, as of cultural familiarity and language training, so initiative like Hindi, Spanish language bridges, ICCR culture centers and youth exchange programs, they address in soft barriers to business. And many Latin American space agencies, they have shown interest in ISRO's frugal satellite model, क्योंकि आप जितना टाइम से आप पढ़ रहे हैं तो आपको पता ही है कि ISRO is sending satellite at a reasonable cost, not just reasonable, nominal cost. हम इस चीज़ में सैटेलाइट स्पेस भेजने में we are gaining the attention of the world, especially because of the cost reduction. ऐसे में Latin American countries जो हैं they are also seeking collaboration with us. Now, edge of energy and resource diplomacy, पहले बताया वो एक briefer version था, अब expanded version. So in 21st century the modern diplomacy, it is more about resources and energy security. And for an emerging power like India, energy security, access to critical minerals, they are core components of strategic autonomy. And here, Latin America, with its vast natural resources and relatively untapped geopolitical potential, it offers India a rare opportunity to diversify its resource supply chain and reduce dependence on volatile regions and build long-term strategic partnership. ये तीनों diversify resource supply chain, क्योंकि अगर वो नहीं करेंगे then we get locked up with a toxic partner like China और US. और ऐसे में जैसे जो पैंडेमिक के टाइम में देखा था कि if global supply chain if they are not diversified then they can be leveraged, they can be exploited by that partner. So ऐसे में diversification बहुत ज़रूरी है. Then we must reduce dependence on volatile regions. So जैसे अभी रशिया यूक्रेन का है. So पहले जो डिफेंस सप्लाईज हैं, डिफेंस सप्लाईज के अलावा जो फॉसिल फ्यूल्स हैं और उसके अलावा जो ग्रेन है, वो सब ये रशिया और यूक्रेन से आ रहा था. या रशिया एंड यूक्रेन इट फीचर प्रोमिनेंटली इन द ट्रेड बास्केट, बट अब उस रीजन की वोलेटिलिटी बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गई है. फिर उसी के बाद वेस्ट एशियन लैंडस्केप की बात करते हैं तो यहाँ पे वर्सेस ईरान वर्सेस द रेस्ट कर सकते हैं. सो ईरान वर्सेस सऊदी अरेबिया, यूएस, इजराइल. अब यहाँ पे इन फ्रिक्शन की वजह से भी जो जो एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी है, जो ऑयल सिक्योरिटी है, इट शुड it needs a relook. And then we must build long-term strategic partnership, क्योंकि in 21st century it is not just about interest-based relationship. We should have long-term strategic partnership of friends that can at least maintain stability and predictability in their diplomatic outreach. So here first comes energy security beyond West Asia. So while India remains heavily reliant on West Asian oil, Latin America is emerging as a supplementary, in some case, a complementary stable source of energy resources. As of oil and gas imports, Brazil and Mexico, two of Latin America's energy giants, they are viewed as strategic alternatives. And here, India's ONGC Videsh Limited, it has invested in offshore oil fields in Brazil, and a private player like Reliance Industries, they had diversified crude sourcing from Venezuela and Mexico. And despite political instability in Venezuela, बाकी में तो politically stable है, Indian company like Reliance, they have maintained a transactional relationship with Caracas that by navigating sanctions and geopolitical tension via back-channel diplomacy. Now, the Latin America's oil, it has lower geopolitical baggage compared to West Asia or Russia. Geopolitical baggage जो है, it means geopolitical risks. जो ये आप समझ सकते हैं कि वेस्ट एशिया से या रशिया से अगर आप ऑयल इंपोर्ट करते हैं तो देन दे आर threats of risks of supply disruption or price volatility that may be triggered by conflict like Russia-Ukraine war, tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, or the tension in Israel-Palestine relations, or tension between the relationship between Iran and the USA. So ऐसे में जो geopolitical baggage है वो Latin America energy resources में कम है. Now, as of green energy partnership, so here India and Latin America, they are aligning on clean energy cooperation. Chile, with its high solar irradiation, and Brazil, with its expertise in biofuel and hydroelectricity, they are engaging with India on renewable energy projects. And India's MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, it is exploring partnership in green hydrogen with Chile and Argentina. And as of current news of 2024, Chile has formally invited Indian firms to participate in its national green hydrogen roadmap, which aligns with India's national green hydrogen mission. Now let's talk about critical minerals, which is a new frontier of strategic autonomy. So this post-pandemic world and the rise of electrical vehicles, they had created demands for critical minerals like lithium, cobalt, and rare earth. And for India, which aims to produce 30% of vehicle as electric by 2030, these minerals are needed. So here comes into picture is the lithium triangle. So this trio controls 60% of world lithium reserve, and India's engagement have picked pace via bilateral MOUs, joint ventures. In 2023, India signed an MOU with Argentina for lithium exploration and secure preferential access for some mining zone. And talks with Bolivia and Chile are also going, focusing on long-term active offtake agreement. Now, one more thing need to be kept in mind, because lithium mining, it is an environmental issue, but India is projecting itself as a responsible partner that aligns with SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. Now, as of copper and rare earth, so India imports significant amount of copper from Chile and Peru, which are essential for EVs, solar panels, and power grids. In the present time, China controls over 80% of global rare earth minerals. So dependence, especially on this, on such a toxic partner, ये reduce करने के लिए this broader de-risking strategy is there, and under this strategy, critical mineral strategy, India was to make the outreach to Latin America. Now, multilateral energy diplomacy. First comes the International Solar Alliance that includes countries, Latin American countries such as Brazil, Peru, Chile, and such initiative is enabling collaborative project on solar energy deployment, battery storage, and off-grid electrification. In 2023, India proposed a Latin America and India energy dialogue under the aegis of ISA. Now, as of cultural and educational linkages, let's first have a look at historical and cultural connection. So, the cultural ties between these two regions can be traced back to early 20th century, when Indian diaspora community began to establish roots in Caribbean, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and Suriname. So this connection laid the foundation for India's cultural diplomacy. So first, जो diaspora है उसका आपको बता दिया. There are overall 1.5 million people, and many cultural practices such as Diwali celebration, Holi festival, and Indian classical music, they have their footprints in this region. And these cultural festivals, they are also expanding India's soft power in this region. And you might have heard about chutney music. So chutney music is a fusion of Indian and Caribbean sounds. So this has become popularized in these Caribbean islands. Now, as of expanding education collaboration, so India has focused on collaborative research, capacity building, and student exchange program. So the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, and as well as MEA, Ministry of External Affairs, they have offered various scholarship for Latin American students to study in Indian university. So these programs like the General Scholarship Scheme, the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, and they have been seeing rising participation from Latin American countries in fields like engineering, medicine, and international relations. Then India's higher education sectors, they have also responded with more collaborative opportunity like IITs or IIMs, Indian Institute of Technologies and Indian Institute of Management. Both of them, they started offering joint programs with Latin American universities. And as of current affairs, India's Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, it has recently entered into an agreement with Brazil's Institute of Economics to promote joint research on sustainable development and economic growth. Now, as of language and cultural training, so Latin American embassies in India, they are intensifying their cultural outreach programs that include language courses, bridge courses that uh, act as a bridge between Indian and the Romance languages. And Indian University, especially JNU, DU, they have opened dedicated Latin American Studies department, which are by offering graduate and postgraduate programs on Latin American history, political, and sociology. A fun insight that Portuguese is becoming increasingly popular in India's higher education ecosystem, driven by Brazil's growing economic footprint and the cultural ties between India, गोवा एंड ब्राज़ील, क्योंकि गोवा जो है एक पोर्चुगीज कॉलोनी थी एंड गोवा में पोर्चुगीज इज स्टिल द ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज. As of people to people connectivity. India's emphasis on cultural soft power is paying dividend in Latin America, and Indian cultural organizations like the India Indira Gandhi Cultural Center in Buenos Aires, India House in Brazil, and the Nehru Center in Mexico City, they actively promote Indian arts, films, and literature. And Bollywood cinema that has also recently growing popularity in this region, particularly in Brazil and Argentina. And then yoga and Ayurveda, the forever spices. Now ये जो facts हैं ये तो अब जाने दीजिए. Now, as of tourism and heritage connection, so there is a burgeoning interest in tourism. So many Latin American are visiting India for spiritual heritage such as Varanasi, Rishikesh, Bodh Gaya, and India is also tapping into Latin American tourism market. And there is this cultural heritage is another avenue of collaboration. So the UNESCO World Heritage sites like Machu Picchu in Peru and Itza in Mexico, they align with India's own rich heritage and provide opportunities for reciprocal trade relations. अब यस ये मेरे दिमाग से नहीं जा रहा ये कल्चरल फेस्टिवल्स और जो ये है अब योगा आयुर्वेद योगा स्टडीज इंटरनेशनल योगा डे ये पूरे it has become a global phenomenon ये हम पढ़ सकते हैं and Latin American countries they are enthusiastic participant in such cultural festivals. Now let's have a look at strategic convergence, global governance, and South-South cooperation. So both these regions they seek multipolarity and South-South cooperation, and also the reforms in the institutions of global governance. So India has always positioned itself as a champion of global South. So here Latin America, with its vast natural resources, emerging market, and commitment to social justice, along with its own propensity for South-South cooperation, is emerging as a crucial partner in this mission. फिर हम बात करते हैं South-South cooperation की. So this cooperation is central to India's diplomatic engagement, and this is clearly being manifested in relations with Latin America. क्योंकि both regions historically marginalized in global affairs, seeking to build a multipolar world order or seeking the reforms of global institutions. So ऐसे में दोनों partner ही हैं. So now, as of India's leadership in global governance reform, so India has consistently called for reforms of United Nations Security Council, and these views are echoed by countries like Brazil and Argentina. And in WTO, India and Latin American countries, they have often found themselves in solidarity, pushing back against unfair trade practices imposed by the developed nations from the global north. And India's advocacy for food security and public health access, they align with the concerns of Latin American countries. And as of geopolitical insight, both India and Latin American countries they have been critical of the hegemonic practices of Western powers, while both these countries they advocate for a rule-based international order. So BRICS Forum that includes Brazil, it is a provide that echoes similar concerns. Now let's have a look at climate change and environmental diplomacy. So climate change is becoming one of the defining challenges of 21st century, and India and Latin America they are increasingly aligning their efforts to address environmental concerns. Because Latin America is also going through one of the environmental crisis. Recently, आपने देखा होगा कि the lungs of the forest, the lungs of the earth, the Amazon rainforest, they are burning. So जो place India के हिमालय की है, the same sacredness, the same importance is being placed to Amazon rainforest. और Amazon rainforest की importance ये है कि they are called the lungs of earth. और फिर अगर ये lungs जो हैं, if they are being cut down or being burned, so ऐसे में ये जो the danger है, it is not just for the Latin American countries but for the whole world. So here, the role of Latin America's natural resources. So Latin America, rich in biodiversity and natural resources such as critical minerals, oil, minerals. So here, it is crucial for India's transition to green economy. And even though the extraction of these resources will be environmentally pressing, yet both these regions they share an interest in sustainable development. So in 2023, India and Brazil they signed MOU to cooperate on sustainable agriculture and renewable energy technology. Brazil, which is a leader in biofuels, and India, with its solar power capability, they are finding natural partnership to tackle energy and environmental issues globally. Now, as of current news, India's growing investment in green hydrogen it has found important ally in Chile, a country that is ambitious to become a global leader in green hydrogen by 2023. So there is a push for a natural partnership via climate diplomacy. Now, as of Amazon rainforest preservation, so these resources, these forests, they are global asset in combating climate change. So here, Latin American countries they are seeking international support for its preservation. So here, India has expressed interest in climate financing for this region, and has even supported initiative to help preserve the Amazon while ensuring that development needs of countries are met. So the first issue कि Amazon rainforest why they are depleting in stock, why are they being cut, why are they burning. So यहाँ पे जो element है the development need. So वो तो है ही है, वो तो हर country जो है it seeks mineral resources, और उसकी वजह से जो जो क्रूशियल ग्रीन रिसोर्सेज होते हैं, जो ग्रीन एरियाज होते हैं, उनको भी काटना पड़ता है. बट हियर द एलिमेंट ऑफ सस्टेनेबिलिटी इट कम्स टू पिक्चर कि ये चीज़ बैलेंस हो सकती है. सो वन मैकेनिज्म ऑफ बैलेंस, क्योंकि डेवलपमेंट नीड्स it can be facilitated by two things. First, क्लाइमेट फाइनेंसिंग हो, अदर टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रांसफ़र हो. अगर ये दोनों ही मिल जाए तो फिर कोई भी कंट्री डेवलपमेंट नीड्स के लिए जो क्रिटिकल रिसोर्सेज हैं उनको क्यों काटेगी. Then India's ISA it has expanded its engagement with Latin American countries to promote renewable energy with Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. Now, as of collaborative approach to trade and agreement, so here both these countries they have shown interest in creating more equitable trading partner, and both the regions they are facing challenges related to inequality, poverty, and underdevelopment. So ऐसे में दोनों का जो support जो है it is increasingly being sought. So here in the matters of trade partnership, so this expansion of trade partnership with Latin America it goes beyond commodities and seeking diversification into sectors such as technology, manufacturing, and services. फिर जो पहले बात की थी इंडिया मर्कोसर फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट जिसको में अभी बात चल रही है, इट इज़ ऑल्सो अबाउट एक्सपेंशन ऑफ ट्रेड कोऑपरेशन बाय रिड्यूसिंग बैरियर्स टू गुड एंड सर्विसेज. फिर इंडियाज आउटरीच टू पैसिफिक अलायंस, एक और ब्लॉक है मर्कोसर जैसा ब्लॉक दैट इंक्लूड चिली, कोलंबिया, मैक्सिको एंड पेरू, तो जिसमें इंडिया का ऑब्जर्वर स्टेटस है. So this bloc also represents a dynamic region with vast potential. So here India is seeking relationship, trade partnership in sectors like automobile, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, and information technology. So here the growing convergence of India's Act East policy and Pacific Alliance economic goals, it is evident of Indo-Pacific strategy. Now, as of health and pandemics, Global South solidarity. So this pandemic, it laid bare the vulnerability of the global south. Not just laid bare, it has exposed naked the truth, the ultimate truth about human tendencies, and it has also exposed us to the world that how vulnerable the people of global south are. So both the people from both Latin America and India, they face significant health challenges. फिर उसमें कई collaboration भी हुए, such as vaccine distribution, medical supplies, and medical pandemic recovery strategy. So, India's pharmaceutical industry, particularly vaccine manufacturing capabilities, they they played a role in providing affordable vaccine to the Latin American countries. The Vaccine Method Initiative का सुना होगा, where India sent millions of doses of Covaxin and Covishield to countries like Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. फिर bilateral health collaborations भी हुए. They started increasing on projects like infectious disease, maternal health, and mental health. फिर India, a hub of telemedicine and affordable health technology, it aligns well with the needs of many Latin American nations. Where India's recent development, India's Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute of India, they have announced joint ventures with Brazil's Butantan Institute to co-develop and distribute vaccine for dengue and Zika. As of multilateralism and UN reform, so here both these regions, they find strategic convergence because both of them, they advocate for reformed global governance architecture. So here, Latin American countries like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, they believe that global institutions like UN, IMF, World Bank, WTO, they have been historically dominated by world countries. And here, the representation of global South countries, it is not there. So this should change. So this shared vision, it calls for expansion and democratization of UN Security Council. So both countries which are part of G4 coalition, जो आपको बताया था, they advocate for inclusion of permanent members from global south. तो UNC में UNSC, United Nations Security Council, उसमें अभी 5 members हैं और global south countries नहीं हैं, excluding China. So ऐसे में, so India, Latin America, this group, they seek expansion of UN Security Council कि न सिर्फ ग्लोबल साउथ कंट्री बल्कि जितनी भी एमर्जिंग पावर्स हैं या जितने भी डिफरेंट रीजन्स हैं उन सबको भी इसके अंदर रिप्रेजेंट किया जाए. And their joint effort, it underscored the desire to make the UNSC more representative of 21st century global power balance. So यहाँ पे सही इनकैप्सुलेशन हुआ है कि 21st century में जो पावर डायनामिक्स हैं वो चेंज हो गए हैं. ऐसे में this institution that was created in 1945, it should reflect the modern dynamics by giving representation to people, to different countries from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So, under this insight, India and Brazil, both of them, they are seeking reforms in the USC. They have done this. They are during G20 summit in 2023, where both underscored the need for equitable global governance. And India and many Latin American countries, they usually call for increased representation in global institutions like IMF, World Bank, and WTO, which are dominated by the countries from global north. So the argument is that these bodies, they should better reflect the global realities and aspiration of the developing world, which means giving them greater share of voting rights in these institutions. As of climate change and environmental justice, so both these regions, they have found common ground in climate change diplomacy, where they believe in principle of common but differentiated responsibility and respective capability. CBDR, RC और जोड़ दिया उसमें. So as of new elements, joint endorsement of CBDR, RC at COP summit. So the principle, it has been rallying point for both India and Latin American countries in their advocacy for climate justice. क्योंकि यहाँ पे argument same है that the developed countries, they have historically contributed the most to the global emission. So ज़्यादा responsibility उनको लेनी चाहिए for mitigating climate change and for reducing the emissions. and they should provide financial support to developing countries. And they have these countries, India and Latin American nations, they have consistently pushed for fair climate policy at COP meetings. Now, as of recent development in 2024, during COP28, India and Brazil they jointly proposed a climate financing mechanism that prioritizes agriculture-based solutions and renewable energy transitions. Now, International Solar Alliance and Agroclimatic Resilience. So, in renewable term, India has increasingly collaborated with Latin American countries via ISA. So, this platform, which was launched in 2015, it has included many countries from Latin America. So, here, India's expertise in agroclimate resilience, such as drought-resistant crops and water-efficient irrigation technology, it aligns with the concerns of Latin America. Now, as of trade justice, so here they both these regions they share commitment to trade justice, particularly in reforming the World Trade Organization, especially providing flexibility in areas such as agricultural subsidies, IPR, intellectual property rights under TRIPS, and reducing the non-tariff barriers that are imposed by developed nations. So here, India and Latin America countries, they are seeking reforms of WTO, whereas they demand greater flexibility in WTO's TRIPS agreement that is related to intellectual property rights. TRIPS का मतलब ये trade related aspects of property right. So इसमें कि जो पेटेंट्स होते हैं, द पेटेंट्स ऑन लाइफ सेविंग मेडिसिन, अब यहाँ पे अगर वो पेटेंट्स हमेशा अगर ग्लोबल नॉर्थ कंट्रीज को डेवलप कंट्रीज उन्हीं के पास रहेगा तो फिर उनकी जेनरिक मेडिसिन जो है विच कैन सेव मैनी लाइव्स स्पेशली इन वल्नरेबल कंट्री इन कंट्रीज ऑफ ग्लोबल साउथ जहाँ पे गरीब लोग रहते हैं. सो अगर ये जो वेवर मिल जाए, इसमें फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी मिल जाए तो टाइम पे यही दवाएं जो है, यही मेडिसिन जो है ये गरीब लोगों को पहुंच सकती है. और दिस interest, it was particularly evident during COVID-19 pandemic, where both regions, India and Latin America, they called for waivers on vaccine patents. क्योंकि अगर ऐसे में पैंडेमिक टाइम में अगर ये वैक्सीन पेटेंट्स जो हैं, इफ इट इज रिलैक्स, सो गरीब लोगों को भी अफोर्डेबल मेडिसिन मिल सकती है. सिमिलरली एग्रीकल्चरल सब्सिडीज, क्योंकि यहाँ पे दिस सिस्टम इट इज हाईली स्क्यूड इन फेवर ऑफ डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज. सो ये एक सिग्निफिकेंट पॉइंट ऑफ कंटेंशन है और ये पॉइंट जो है ये दोहा राउंड के बाद अभी तक चल रहा है. सो इंडिया एंड लैटिन अमेरिका दे हैव पुश फॉर रिफॉर्म्स दैट अलाउ देम टू प्रोटेक्ट देयर डोमेस्टिक एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर विदाउट फेसिंग ट्रेड सैंक्शंस. क्योंकि एग्रीकल्चर सब्सिडी उनके लिए ज़रूरी है. गरीब जो देश हैं, इंडिया जो डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज है, इंडिया लैटिन अमेरिका, सो यहाँ पे सिग्निफिकेंट पॉपुलेशन इज एम्प्लॉयड इन एग्रीकल्चर. सो ऐसे में अगर वो अपने जो जो सिटीजन्स हैं, जो एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट हैं, फार्मर्स हैं, उनको अगर वो उनके लिए कुछ नहीं करेंगे, उनको सब्सिडीज प्रोवाइड नहीं करेंगे, सो दे आर गोइंग टू फेस टफ एंड सम लीथल कंपटीशन फ्रॉम प्रोडक्ट दैट विल बी इम्पोर्टेड इन देयर कंट्री बाय द वेस्टर्न नेशंस. सो ऐसे में जो गरीब किसान है वो फिर क्या करेगा. ऑलरेडी जो लैंड होल्डिंग्स हैं, जो फार्म होल्डिंग्स हैं, वो बहुत कम हो गई है. 85% जो है इंडिया में जो फार्मर्स हैं दे आर स्मॉल एंड मार्जिनल. सो ऐसे में अगर वो सब्सिडीज रिड्यूस कर देंगे तो फिर उनकी जो स्मॉल एंड मार्जिनल फार्मर्स हैं उनका जो प्रोड्यूस है इट विल बी कॉस्टली इन इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड. अगर ये कॉस्टली हो जाएगा तो फिर ये जो डेवलप्ड नेशंस हैं, रिच नेशंस हैं, उनका प्रोड्यूस, उनकी कमोडिटीज़ जो है वो इंडियन मार्केट में आएगी. तो फिर ये स्मॉल एंड मार्जिनल फार्मर को क्या मिलेगा. लेकिन अगर वो एग्रीकल्चर सब्सिडीज देते हैं तो फिर दीज ग्लोबल इंस्टीट्यूशन स्पेशली WTO विच इज़ कंट्रोल्ड बाय दीज रिच नेशंस, दे इम्पोज ट्रेड सैंक्शंस. सो ये दोनों तरफ से ये जो ट्रेड रूल्स हैं, जो कार्ड्स हैं, दे आर हेल्ड बाय these western countries. So here India and Latin American countries, they view global trade reform as a broader effort to challenge the unequal economic structure that is established by West. Now, as of IPSA fund, that is a model for South-South cooperation. So IPSA fund, that is India, Brazil, South Africa Fund for Poverty and Hunger Alleviation. It is another facet for South-South cooperation between India and Latin American countries, where the fund, which is funded by India, Brazil, South Africa, it it is being leveraged to fund sustainable development projects across Africa, Latin America, and Asia, with focus on poverty alleviation and hunger eradication. Now, as of sustainable development projects, so through the EPSA fund, India and Brazil, they have supported various development projects in Latin America, especially in agriculture, healthcare, and energy access. A recent example, the IPSA fund, it recently launched a project in Honduras to improve food security by introducing high yield crop varieties. Now look at challenges and opportunities. So first, geographical and logistic challenge, that is related to distance. So the geographical distance between India and Latin America is often cited as a significant challenge to trade and economic integration, क्योंकि डायरेक्ट शिपिंग रूट्स है नहीं, एविएशन लिंक्स वो लिमिटेड हैं, एंड सिग्निफिकेंट टाइम एंड कॉस्ट डिफरेंसेस, सो उसकी वजह से भी लॉजिस्टिकल इनएफिशिएंसी होती है, और इसका एक ओवरव्यू आपको पहले दिया था. नाउ current development, so efforts are being made to reduce these barriers, such as air connectivity agreement between India and Latin American nations like Mexico and Brazil, and additionally the establishment of direct trade routes via port of Mumbai and port of Santos. So इसके कारण भी जो अगर ऐसा एक मैरीटाइम चैनल क्रिएट होता है तो उसकी वजह से एक डायरेक्ट एक्सेस रूट हो सकता है. अदरवाइज जो डिस्टेंस है, जो जोग्राफिकल डिस्टेंस है, दे कैन नॉट बी इग्नोर्ड ऑल टुगेदर, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली ट्रेड का पर्पस ही प्रॉफिट होता है. अगर डिफरेंसेस, अगर ट्रेड रिलेशंस वॉल्यूम में एंड वैल्यूएशन में दोनों में कम है और डिस्टेंस ज़्यादा है, so this will be an unprofitable endeavor and no trader will engage into something that is causing direct loss. So ऐसे में अगर कोई स्पेशल आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स सोल्यूशन मिल जाए तो दोनों के बीच में द frequency of maritime trade, or frequency of this trade endeavors, they can increase. Now, in 2023, India's Ministry of Shipping, it announced that India-Brazil Port Connectivity Initiative, it would cut logistic cost by 15%. So logistic cost means वही एक जगह से दूसरी जगह ले जाने का, the conveyance cost, the जो ships हैं उनका माल बोर्ड करके वहाँ पे डी बोर्ड करना, फिर जो फ्यूल कॉस्ट है, जो मैन पावर कॉस्ट है, तो ओवरऑल ये सब जो कॉस्ट है ये लॉजिस्टिक कॉस्ट है, और उन्हीं पे प्रॉफिट डिपेंड करता है, और यहीं पे अगर ये कॉस्ट रिड्यूस हो जाए तो प्रॉफिट बढ़ेगा, तो उस पे अल्टीमेटली ट्रेड रिलेशंस ऑटोमेटिकली इंक्रीज हो जाएंगे. देन challenges still remain in optimizing this logistic routes, and infrastructure gaps are also there, particularly in landlocked regions of Latin America. So ये जो gaps हैं, they pose barrier to full realization of trade potential. फिर the cultural and linguistic differences. So the cultural linguistic differences तो है ही हैं, and they pose a barrier to deeper integration. While Spanish is a dominant language across most of the region, Latin American region, India में हिंदी, English और regional dialects हैं. So यहाँ पे कोई एक bridge language है नहीं. So efforts are being made to bridge those cultural gap. So India is increasingly invested in cultural diplomacy, like initiative like ICCR and Hindu-Urdu Language and Cultural Center in Brazil. And efforts are also being made to increase people-to-people ties, enhance mutual understanding, and promote Indian culture via art exhibition festival. Where जो diaspora है, they are also playing a vital role in creating bridging this cultural gap. And A fun fact: the largest Indian diaspora in Latin America, it is in Trinidad and Tobago, where 40% of population they are of Indian origin that date back to 19th century. फिर उसके बाद another challenge is about the political and economic instability in certain Latin American country जो वेनेजुएला के अंदर है, ठीक है. So such revolutions, regime changes and economic crisis they also alter the trajectory of international relation. So एक वेनेजुएला के अंदर है ये, फिर बोलीविया के अंदर भी the shift towards a left wing government is it has also presented challenge. फिर नाउ कंपटीशन फॉर अदर ग्लोबल पावर स्पेशली चाइना. तो चाइना का जो फुटप्रिंट है वो इंडिया से काफ़ी ज़्यादा है. जैसे हम 23 बिलियन US डॉलर हमारा जो ट्रेड वॉल्यूम है विद लैटिन अमेरिकन कंट्रीज, और उसके कंपैरिजन में चाइना का 450 बिलियन US डॉलर है. सो ये एक मिसमैच है. फिर उसके अलावा जो अदर पार्टनर्स भी हैं लाइक यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स, यूरोपियन यूनियन, तो वो भी है, तो वो भी हमारे कंपटीशन में भी है. नाउ चाइना इज डोमिनेंस इन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. सो चाइना का जो BRI है इट हैज सिग्निफिकेंटली इंक्रीज इट्स इन्वेस्टमेंट इन लैटिन अमेरिका सच एज पोर्ट्स, रोड्स एंड रेलवेज. सो और ये आप जानते ही हैं कि दिस डेट ट्रैप डिप्लोमेसी दैट इज frequently used by China under such project. तो इसमें चाइना जो है इट प्रोवाइड कंसेशनल लोन्स टू सच रीजनल गवर्नमेंट्स. फिर बाद में यही लोन्स जो हैं ये इनकी टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस जो होती है वो इस तरह से होती है कि द कंट्रीज द रिसीवर नेशंस दे फ्रीक्वेंटली फाइंड देमसेल्फ अनेबल टू पे ऑफ द डेट्स. सो ऐसे में फिर चाइना जो है इट लेवरेज इट्स पोजीशन इन अ नेगेटिव वे. Now the way forward. First, strengthening institutional and diplomatic engagement. So one key area for improvement it lies in institutionalizing and improving diplomatic ties. So India has maintained a presence in Latin America with embassies and consulates, and but uh, there is a gap that needs effective coordination. First, creating regional forums for deeper dialogue. So India can explore enhancing its regional diplomacy by strengthening existing mechanisms like India CLAS, which is Community for Latin America and Caribbean Strait, and it can also enhance its outreach in Pacific Alliance. And these forums they can act as bridges between India and Latin American countries by offering opportunity for greater economic collaboration, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic efforts. Then India should prioritize the creation of permanent India Latin America Economic Forum that convenes government officials, business leaders, and think tank. Now, enhancing political ties through mutual interest. So, while both these countries they share deep commitment to multilateralism and democratic governance, but a high-level exchange between Indian leaders and Latin American counterparts, it can provide a solid foundation for mutual interest. Now, as of enhancing economic cooperation, so India needs a comprehensive trade strategy that goes beyond individual country to country engagement and address regional market inefficiency. Now, finally, building trade alliances. So India can explore strategic trade agreement with Mercosur, which is South Africa's largest trading bloc, then Pacific Alliance and CARICOM. So here, these agreements they can create a framework for low tariff access, investment facilitation, and elimination of non-tariff barriers. So इन सब के कारण ये एक तो ये एग्रीमेंट्स हो गए, ट्रेड अलायंसेज हो गए, और उसके बाद जो मार्केट इनएफिशिएंसीज हैं पर्टिकुलरली इन लॉजिस्टिक्स, सप्लाई चेन एंड मार्केट एक्सेस, सो ये अगर एड्रेस हो जाए, सो जो बेसिक इनकम प्रॉफिट्स इंक्रीज हो जाएंगे. सो इंडियन प्राइवेट सेक्टर जो है इट कैन readily engage itself into economic cooperation with Latin American countries. And India can build on sector which has with it holds a competitive advantage. So India का जो advantage है like pharmaceutical, information technology, automobiles, renewable energy. So यहाँ पे India can leverage its competitive advantage to create such profitable trade initiatives. And finally, the role of regional value chain. So fostering regional value chain is another important step. So Indian company now they can set up manufacturing hubs and assembly plants across Latin America. So this will not only reduce costs but also make Indian products more competitive in regional markets. So here, instead of thinking about logistics, अगर इंडियन कंपनीज हैं दे फाइंड द स्टेशन इन ऑन द लैटिन अमेरिकन सॉइल, सो वहीं पे अगर ये मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्लांट्स हैं, असेंबली प्लांट्स हैं, सप्लाई प्लांट्स हैं, अगर वहीं पे बनाएं सो तो उनके पास जो लॉजिस्टिक या जितने भी इनएफिशिएंसी वाला जो है जितने पैरामीटर्स हैं वो फिर वहाँ वो सब मैटर सॉल्व हो जाएगा. तो यहाँ पे उनका जो प्रोडक्ट जो है वो रीजनल मार्केट्स के अंदर कम्पिटिटिव हो जाएगा. So Bajaj Auto, Mahindra, Tata Motors, they have already set up plants in Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. But expansion is further needed. Then in 2024, India signed FTA with Mercosur bloc, which is like a key milestone in increasing India's presence in South Africa. So this is it. Thank you very much, and kindly subscribe the channel.